My name is Ana Regidor. I'm the host of Creative Morning Berlins. The global theme of today is nomads, and our speaker is Klemens Sitzmann. He is a designer and an architecture. I hope you enjoy it.
Hello, thanks for the invitation. Maybe some words to me. I'm a trained architect. Funnily, I worked on the facade of one of the buildings in the back. But what I'm going to show you is not my architecture work, but more stuff that drives me from architecture to some artistic projects. Also, maybe I put my timer here. The title of my work, I call it Debris of the Future. So it's basically a projection on not the near future, but also the far future, because at the moment, I think we all live in quite tumultuous times. And it's a bit hard to predict what's coming in the next 10 years, what's in the next 30 years, 100 years, like what is in 1,000 years. Like it's completely, feels like off the limit. And I think, so I worked on certain projects. These were like part of kind of my own research, design research projects, fun projects. But they all kind of align on a certain projection of the future. Some are a little bit more close to us, some are a little bit more far and abstract. So I think this is a timeline on the bottom from the year 2000 and going to the year 4000, 6000, 8000. It's entirely hypothetical, but we go from two projects that are a bit more architectural, conceptual, to some projects where we then end up with a complete abstraction of things. So yeah, I would start with one title, Architecture of Absolution. It's a project that came to my mind. In the Catholic Church, there's the ministry of absolution that speaks you free of all your sins, and then you can start again as a new person. And I personally always felt like that, you know, the capitalism and the markets, you know, like they all go like only up or it's like quite tumultuous. And so I made up a fictional scenario where there's a financial crisis, and then the politicians couldn't start the markets anymore, and everybody got desperate, and the markets were down, and nobody knew anymore what to do. So they, in their despair, they turned to religious superstition, and in the scope of this ministry of absolution, they built like a big ring that cast down like some, I don't know, holy water to the financial district in the hope to get it rid of its sins and its past and to be able to start again. So being an architect, I also work with images, and I like to create fictional scenarios, and so I really wanted to have New York in like this continuous cast of mist. So it's basically this ring that got constructed over Wall Street, even though we know everything is now algorithmically traded, but kind of as a symbolism. But so this ring then casts down this water, and everything is in a mist. But this is basically a try on a solution in a very desperate times. So I thought it's quite a funny take, and also I always felt like that architecture is, you know, it's basically just building a bit what is necessary and some functions and so on. But I really wanted to go a bit more wild and a little bit more, you know, maybe a bit critical or maybe a bit militant. So yeah, this was one take. And obviously, I really liked creating these images out of New York, where I also lived, and I really like New York, but still, I think for the project it was not to be overly critical. And yeah, when I was basically done with the images, and then I found a very nice track from Schubert, and then I was like, it fits so nice to this mood, so I had to do an animation of it. good. But yeah, a second project, and now we go a bit from architecture to art, and this is a continuous project I was working on for a long time. It was also started as my thesis project 10 years ago, a bit more than that. And it's called Logium. It's the absolute library, or like it's intended to be basically on the left side the burning of the Library of Alexandria, which was one of the biggest universal libraries where literally everything, there was a copy of every little ship book. And the Tower of Babel on the right-hand side also as a bit of megalomaniac project. But I wanted to make basically an archive for like the contemporary version of the Library of Alexandria. And first of all, I had to figure out how many books exist there in the world. And Google Books names it that there are 130 million. This was 2010. At the moment, the number is probably a lot higher. But this was kind of the number I was working. So basically, I had to do a bit of research where I need basically a huge, massive volume, and also to calculate how much it would need it to create like an archive of this colossal scale. And I found a beautiful piece of land it's in the Northern Territory in Canada, way above the polar circle. It's an old diamond mine. It's not an old diamond mine, it's still running at the moment, but it basically creates this, I hope it's visible, like it's an island in a lake, and it's basically only reachable by an airstrip, and in the winter by these ice trucks that drive on the ice. But it has basically a lot of infrastructure. It has two big open pits. They're like 700 meters in diameter. And I was like, yeah, this is the perfect place to build this archive. So I was doing some calculations on, these are contemporary libraries where the green is the books and the rest is the program of the library. While in this one, this is a section to the pit. Basically, it consists out of all books, and then the programs is basically embedded in them. So it's basically like a big superstructure where then the smaller functions are embedded there. And so I created this big archive with different functions, and these functions are some on different levels on the plot. So basically, we only go from ground level down. So you have different kinds of immersion with like a reading hall, an auditorium, learning landscape, a digital archive where everything gets digitized. And so basically, this was it's a bit like architecture floating in books. And the beautiful thing was that, yeah, it was quite a different project, and it was also quite huge. So I was not sure if I can pull this off, or like how do you, it gets a bit, takes some time to get into it. And so basically here, maybe one back. So this is basically the one access point, and what you see here radially, it's a bit imprinted like a fingerprint. It's like the book stacks, and now we go under the cupola. And so you have like the top surface of all the racks. And yeah, this was very, I always wanted to create this image. Somehow like everything just consists of books in the back of books. And very annoyingly, Christopher Nolan released Interstellar, where they had this Tesseract book space, and it was a couple of weeks before my presentation, so I feel like it was a bit taken from me. But yeah, but I still had a lot of fun at creating this. I mean, it was also a lot of work creating this project, and I created a very small animation which goes slowly through through the space, and it shows a bit like this remoteness of this archive. So basically, it also started with a discussion with my back then roommate. If Einstein would have lived today with the internet, would have he been able to do a lot more work? And I was actually thinking, no, probably a lot less, because when you really need to focus, you need to seclude yourself from a lot of things. So I was basically thinking this is a good proposal to make this project in such a faraway area. So these are basically all these book stacks that go from the bottom of the pit to the top surface with different circulations between them. But they're a bit like these monoliths that are consisting of books. So yes, that this was basically the vision that drove the whole process about this very immersive space consisting of books and robots that organize the books, and where you can like literally physically immerse yourself in like millions of books, and basically all the, you know, pretty much written human knowledge till that day. All right, and then as another take, so this now we go a bit more in the future. Like it comes a bit about, you know, like on the left-hand side is like Kazimir Malevich artworks, and so I wanted to basically create something that is architectural, but it's not really bound to its, you know, the rules of buildings. So what if a city is floating, and what about different kinds of geometries that are somewhat interacting with each other with breaking the rules of composition and relations. So I started to, you know, creating some, you know, conglomerations of like some proto-architecture that are shifted together. And it was quite nice to be working in a material, but then I also printed some of these works, but then I was thinking like, yeah, reality is like geometry, material, and light, and it gives this realistic look. But what about if we cut out material and light and just focus on geometry as the primary carrier of information? Like, what do we get out of there? And I really love working in abstract ways, so I made myself some kind of a drawing engine that renders really abstract drawings, and because I really like this maximum contrast of black and white. And it was quite nice to create from this same model like different versions of abstraction, where you can also, it's a bit more open to interpretation rather than this realistic take. And yeah, I started experimenting more with like conglomerations of geometry, of architecture, like of, you know, somewhat cityscapes. And it was quite fun because it was really a bit of take on you can't model all of this, so you have to work with certain algorithms and codes. So it was quite nice to bring all of this together, and also surprise myself, because like I'm not exactly knowing what I'm doing. I'm just playing around and then getting a little grip of it, and then slowly working myself towards something that I like. And so even further now, we are a bit more in the future. This is called Landscape of the Post-Human, which is literally post-human. So I was thinking like we are in the Anthropocene, and we are the ones carving the surface of the planet, and we will not do this for very much longer, most likely. I mean, it depends on what time frame you think, but like, what is 1,000 years, 2,000 years? Like, we are not. Let's say we are also in the process of creating new artificial life, which will surpass us in our capabilities. And what if algorithms shape the surface of the Earth, or nanorobots, or some kind of intelligent machines? So this was some kind of experimental take on how landscapes could look like when it's not us who define them by agriculture or cityscapes. So it was basically a bit of a Rorschach test for, you know, architects and city planners somehow, that, you know, what kind of geometry can you create, what kind of shapes you can see, what kind of conglomerations. And for me personally, it's also one of these processes where I'm not drawing all of this. I'm basically somewhat code this in certain algorithms and parameters, and it's quite interesting to me then what kind of landscapes come out, what kind of digital terrains. And Yeah, it was quite. It's quite ongoing process, and it's always nice to experiment with these shapes. But then I was also like why don't I print them on some nice surfaces? And I started printing them on metal. And the nice thing is, I printed it in a way that you leave the metal out, so it creates an overdynamic contrast. So the white is more white than a white print, but because of the reflection of natural light, it's quite strong and creates kind of this, yeah, quite maximum contrast. And for me, it was also differently. Like I work a lot in the computer, but once you print something, like it's very different if you see something on the screen or if you hold it in your hands, like the haptic feedback, like the visual quality, the little grain. It's really something that always amazes me, and I think it's only, yeah, that's why I still think like to have something physical is really, really valuable. And there's the magic that happens from the transition from digital to physical. And then I was like, yeah, but why? Like they are 2D, but they are landscapes. And then I got myself some very nice pieces of wood and started milling because the whole process is three-dimensional. So I I decided to, why don't I, create these landscapes which are artificial, but in a very natural material like wood, where you have the grain and you have the bark and you have all these pieces, and it's quite amazing what comes together. Like you have this little imprint of the machine. It's basically all code that drives the whole machine, and the output is quite interesting. Like certain patterns looked a lot more interesting in 2.5D on wood rather than on the screen, and some others did not. So there was also quite some learning on that. And this is all real wood. It's really some woods that I also haven't heard that they exist, but it's quite amazing when, working with natural materials. So yeah, I mean, and this is all fun stuff. Yeah, this is nothing that I make money. I sell some of this to friends, but that's not really the motivation. But then now I got, and this is a bit confidential. It's recorded, right? So one thing, I was commissioned for like artwork on that's a mega drawing that goes over multiple staircases, and for the Gigafactory in Berlin. So basically the canvas, and here you see a human, it was like these 13 surfaces that you see from the highway. And because I can create these drawings in a super high resolution, and it goes quite fast, so I have like this workflow that can do this rather quick and rather well. So the idea was to create one continuous drawing that spans over these 13 canvases to create one unified drawing. And it was quite interesting to it's maybe not so visible, but to create they wanted something with the layers and objects in the Gigafactory. So I created basically a composition, and it's not so artsy, but they wanted basically also that it shows different areas of the factory and that the people who are there recognize their workplace somehow. And yeah, these were some takes, and then it was like, yeah, we need one continuous element. Maybe it's color that goes through all these objects, and then it was some iterations about, okay, we need to add the spraying thing, and there were some little inside jokes basically. And yeah, then the project evolved, and I think the final version was like 50,000 by 8,000 pixels. So it was rather huge, but it was printed with a little spray robot out of cables, and the output was like, yeah, quite nice. And for me personally, I love scale, so all the projects are rather big, so it was like quite breathtaking to see then this realized in this huge size. So yeah, this was a quite nice process, and this was, yeah, sometimes from this fun work develop some real projects, and I think it's good to experiment around. And yeah, the last project I would like to show is, since I work a lot with patterns and 3D, 2.5D geometry, and when I look at my patterns, it always they speak to me in a way that, some look more aggressive, some look more soft, they have all a different look and feel. And so I was also like I experiment with friends of mine. So these are some other patterns I created. They're just 2D, But then I was like, what would a machine see? Yeah, how would a machine interpret patterns rather than me as a creator or friends of mine as onlookers? And this is the interesting thing about abstract geometry and forms, that they don't tell exactly something, but they are also nicely open to interpretation. And so basically, out of a certain family of patterns, we cut them into 512 pixel parts, and then they're called Pixelit by Zvonko and Alex, the friends of mine. So they basically fed a machine learning algorithm with the patterns that I created, and this machine learning algorithm created a lot of new patterns, and quite a lot of them. And AI is quite good. Some are a little more interesting, some a little less. But for me personally, the magic happened like how did it interpret color? How did it interpret form? And it was quite a nice, none of us knew what the outcome would be. And yeah, it's created a whole new set of new pattern language that also has its qualities. And we were like, yeah, but maybe we can make some products with that. Or like like architecture is expensive, yeah, but 2D textures, you can apply them on a wall, on fabric, on cloth, yeah, there's a lot of more potential. Then we experimented around, like, what if it's, quick takes, like, what is it, fashion, like, can we create some patterns that are, part of daily life objects, of maybe some rugs, and these were some visualizations of this, unfortunately not made yet, but yeah, so this was basically the range of some projects that are in this debris of the future, and this maybe gives some outlook about what's possible and what's fun. So thank you.
Thanks, Klemens. Thanks a lot.